So welcome back to Virtual Get Up to Speed with STEM Day 3. We've had 2 great days so far, lots of exciting activities happening, lots of amazing guests. Emily, can you tell us what we've got to look forward to today?
Yep, today we are looking at renewables and sustainability. So our spotlight is going to be all on how businesses are making the world a better place.
That's great, thanks Emily. And Janice, there's a lot, as well as watching the videos and listening to our speakers, we've got additional resources on there that schools and young people can access and use. Can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, check out the activity workbooks. There's an activity workbook for the secondary schools. There's also an activity workbook for the primary. The primary one is actually full of everything from dot to dots, word searches, activities to do within the classroom, great resources for teachers to get hold of, you know, if you've got the hour or so to kill during the day. The secondary activity workbook is a bit more advanced. It's more business to business, some great challenges in there, some great competitions. There's also, it's all about renewables and energy. We've got an awful lot on that. So it's a great chance for you to actually do it as a project, do it in classroom as a lesson, or even take it home for an homework session. But there's great activities in there, and it's a really good thing to do. And it's so easy, John. You can just, download them. And it's a resource there for teachers.
Absolutely, it's something you can do after you've been today. It's like the challenges are set by the companies we've been working with, so you can watch their videos and then do some activities off the back of that. So there's lots of other stuff to do, but before you start doing any of that, I'd like to introduce our first guest speaker of the day. We've got Leah from Leah Love Science. And Leah's going to talk to us about energy and energy generation. So we'll hand over to Leah now, and then when I come back shortly, we'll have Jackie, who was with us on Monday, back who's my co-presenter for today.
Hi, you lovely people. I hope you're having an amazing Get Up to Speed with STEM so far. I have been watching with a big mug of tea. My name is Leah, and I work at Leah Love Science. I'm a scientist and an engineer, and today I want to tell you how to get the best jump on a trampoline using physics. Now, what do I mean by best jump? Well, there's a lot of cool and potentially dangerous things that you can do on a trampoline, but I think the best thing that you can do on a trampoline is a really, 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 really high jump. To me, the perfect jump on a trampoline is one where I'm in the air for like multiple seconds. But to understand how to get the highest jump on a trampoline, we first have to understand how trampolines actually work. And to understand how trampolines work, we have to understand how energy works. So that's like the physics part of our talk today. First though, I'd like to introduce my friends Eric, Ivan, Sophie and Kat, who have all agreed to help me out today because they have trampolines in the gardens, and sadly, I do not own a trampoline or a garden that I could put a trampoline in, and also all the trampoline parks are closed. So I'm very grateful that they agreed to help me out. Now, energy is all around us. We can see it, sometimes we can feel it, sometimes we can even hear it. But a lot of the time it's basically invisible to us, and it's just going about doing its own thing. And we know that energy powers us. We know that energy powers schools and houses. We know that energy even powers the sun. So like, what's going on there? What is energy? How does it behave? Well, energy comes in loads of different types. Let's call them flavors, like flavors of ice cream. All those flavors are still ice cream, but they all taste different. That's kind of what we're dealing with here. So people like you and me, we run on chemical energy. Our phones and our computers and our houses, they run on electrical energy. And the sun runs on nuclear energy. So even though all of those things behave differently and they do different things, they're all just different flavors of energy. So let's look at a specific example. Like this candle. This candle is giving out, oops, I almost spilled the wax a little bit. This candle is giving out light and heat, and some candles even give out sound. But not this candle. This is a very silent candle. And all of those things are different kinds of energy. So even though I can see the flame and I can feel the heat, and if it was making a sound, I'd be able to hear the sound, they're all just different kinds of energy. So I can say, this candle is giving out lots of energy. And energy can do something really cool. So when it looks like energy disappears, energy just turns into a different flavor. So this is really, really important in physics. When it looks like energy has disappeared, it's just become a new flavor of energy. So energy can't be destroyed, you can't make it disappear, you can only force it to change into something more interesting. And energy also can't come from nowhere. So you can't make energy, you can only take the energy that you have and force it to become useful energy to you. You can't make it out of nothing. So that's really, really important in physics. When it looks like energy's just disappeared, it's actually changed and become something else. So this whole energy changing, can't make energy out of nothing thing sounds kind of confusing, but you're probably familiar with a couple of examples already. Like, for example, this super cool rocket lamp that I bought because I am an adult and my parents aren't around to say no anymore. So this lamp is what's called a neon light. So all of these tubes are filled with different kinds of gases. Under the right conditions, those gases glow with light energy, different colours. So what this lamp basically does is it takes electrical energy from the mains where it's plugged in, and that electrical energy zaps those gases and forces them to become light. So what this lamp does at the flick of a switch is it takes electrical energy and it makes light energy. That took a little while to come on. I was worried it wasn't going to come on. So how cool is that? I can literally flick a switch and force electrical energy to turn into light energy. And that's exactly what your lights at home do as well. Be careful not to drop this. You should always be very careful around neon lights because sometimes the gases inside are not very good for you. So I'm going to be very careful not to destroy this particular one. So even though we can turn one kind of energy into another kind by forcing it to change, an important thing to understand is it's really hard to do. So even though I can force electrical energy to become light energy, there's always a little bit of energy leak when that happens. So for your lights at home, some energy leaks out as heat. And you can totally test this for yourselves. If you take an adult and find a light that has been on for probably a couple of hours and you hold your hand nearby, be really careful not to touch it because some light bulbs get really hot. They're leaking a lot of energy. But if you put your hand nearby, you should be able to feel that it feels kind of warm next to the light bulb. And that is heat energy escaping. And this is kind of bad because it means not all the electrical energy that went into your light, all the electrical energy that you paid for, got turned into light energy that you can use. Some of it leaked out as useless energy. Hot light bulbs are not very useful to anyone. So let's look at another example of energy losses. I have here a pendulum that I built out of glue and bits of wood that I found. It's a little rickety, but it still works. So if I put a little bit of energy into this pendulum, it starts swinging, which is super cool. But each time it swings, it loses a little bit of energy. And eventually it's just going to stop swinging because all that energy will have leaked out. A lot of it leaks out here at the top because there's a lot of friction on this string. But yeah, that's energy leaking out in real time. So it's not very useful for us because we want as much energy as possible to turn into useful energy. Like, for example, we want all the electricity in your light to turn into light energy. And you can kind of reduce this, so you can build a better pendulum with a thinner string so there's less friction, or you can buy energy-saving light bulbs that leak less heat so they don't get as hot. But you can never remove all those leaks completely. Whatever you do, there's always going to be some leaks in whatever you're using to change energy. So let's think of it like this. I've got a big bowl, so I'm going to try not to get my legs wet, which I keep doing. So let's say I've got here a big cup of light energy from the sun. And we know it's light energy because I've clearly labelled it. And let's say I've got a solar panel on my roof, and that solar panel is designed to turn light energy into electrical energy for my house. I've also clearly labelled that. That's good science. Now, in the ideal world, all that light energy would get turned into electrical energy, but we already know that energy likes to leak out of things when we force it to change flavours. So let's look at that happening. Oh my gosh, so much leakage. So I've only got this much energy from my solar panel. I lost so much of it. But that's okay, because I'm going to use this electrical energy to power a fan in my house. So that fan runs on movement energy, or it is movement energy when it turns round. So I'm going to use the electricity to turn it into movement energy, so I've got a nice fan. Oh my gosh though, oh my gosh, I've wet my leg. Barely any of it made it in again. So we started with this massive cup of light energy, and then at the end, powering my fan, I only got this little tiny amount of movement energy, which is okay, I guess. Like, you know, it's still turning the fan, but along the way, we lost this much energy as heat or sound or just energy being in places it wasn't supposed to be. So yeah, not great for our solar panel to electricity to movement kind of system. And we can make that as small as possible, but there's always going to be some leakage. That's just the way it works. So energy is all around us. It comes in different flavors, but all those flavors are just energy. And we can force it to change flavors to make useful energy. But when we do that, we tend to lose a little bit through leaks. So let's look at a different kind of energy. Energy can do something really, really special. You can store it for later. And when you store energy for later, we call that potential energy. Now that's a fancy name, but basically it's just another flavor of energy. But this time, it's energy that we've saved. So food is a really good example of potential energy. Food contains lots of chemical potential energy. And when we eat food, our body turns that chemical energy into movement energy and heat energy and even electrical energy in your heart, which is super cool. And batteries also have chemical potential energy in that when you plug them into a circuit, they make electrical energy. I feel necessary to say at this point, food and batteries, although they have the same kind of energy, are not the same thing. Please do not eat batteries. Your body cannot use that kind of energy. And there's also a kind of potential energy that you get from being really high up. So the further you get from the middle of Earth, the higher you go into the sky, the more potential energy you have. It's called gravitational potential energy, and you can think of it as the energy you store from being really, really high up. So when you're stood on the ground, you don't really have any, but when you're at the top of a diving board, you've got loads of gravitational potential energy ready to be turned into movement energy when you jump off that diving board, which is super cool, that you can get energy just from being high up. Now there's another kind of potential energy that is very important for our talk today, and that is elastic. There's a hair on this. Everything in my house has got hairs on it. Elastic potential energy. So you might notice that if you squish a rubber ball or you stretch a spring, the ball and the spring want to go back to being not squished or not stretched. So if I stretch this spring here and then let go, it wants to go back to being not stretched, which means when I stretch it a little bit, I've stored a little bit of energy in there. And that's what the spring is using to move back into its normal position. Now, how much energy a spring can store depends on two things. Number one, how strong that spring is. So like, is it really stiff? If it's really, really hard to move, then you can store more energy inside of it. So this little guy can't really store very much, but something really, really big and really, really strong, like maybe a trampoline spring, can store a lot of energy inside of it. And number two, how much energy you can store in a spring depends on how much you stretch it. So if I stretch this guy just a little tiny bit, there's not much energy stored in there. If I stretch it loads, and I won't let go because it's quite close to my face, but if I stretch it loads, it's got a lot of energy stored in there, ready to like ping it off into the distance. So we know we can store energy inside springs. Let's have a look at an example of that. So over lockdown, I built this terrible catapult. It's mostly built out of lollipop sticks and glue. Why did I build a terrible catapult? Like I said, I'm an adult and my parents can't tell me not to build catapults anymore. So inside here, you can see there's a spring. And I can store energy in that spring by moving this arm back and stretching that spring. You see that there? So I can store that energy. This is not really a one-hand operation. I can store that energy by holding the arm back. So the string is now the spring is now stretched, and it's got a little bit of energy stored in it there. So if I pop my nice little wheel that's painted very dodgily on here, I can move this target, release the arm, and all that energy in that spring gets released at once and it fires the wheel. Hit my hand. But like I say, this isn't a great catapult. We saw all the energy release, but I mean, the wheel didn't go very far, and the spring's not very strong, and the frame isn't very good. So ideally we want something with a stronger spring, a bigger spring that we can use to store more energy. This is where we introduce the Nerf gun. So I took this Nerf gun apart a few weeks ago because I was thinking about upgrading it, which you definitely shouldn't do, but I also wanted to see how it worked inside. And inside here, there is a really big spring. It's really, really strong, it's really, really stiff, and it's probably like that long. So it's like most of the barrel here. And when I pull this back to load it, I'm stretching that spring. I don't know if you can see how hard that is to move, but this guy can store a lot of the energy inside of it. So right now, that spring is stretched, got my Nerf dart in it, and it's being held in place with all of that potential energy. And when I pull the trigger, all of that energy gets released at once and the Nerf dart goes flying. Oops, it really went flying. I'm gonna do that again because this is my flat. I can destroy things if I want to. So once again, I've stretched out that spring. It's got loads of energy stored inside it. And when I pull the trigger, all that energy gets pushed into the dart and it goes whoof. That might have hit my TV. I'm gonna put the Nerf gun down now. I can't be trusted. So now we know that energy comes in different types. You can force it to change between those types, but when you do that, you lose a little bit of the energy. And we also know that we can store energy in springs. So I can hear you thinking, that's all cool, physics is amazing, but how do I get the highest jump on a trampoline? Is this information useful to me? Fear not, we've come to the trampoline section. So when you jump on the ground, your legs move. Your legs do move. They use movement energy to push you into the air. And you have lots of movement energy in the air, and you get to the top, and you briefly stop, and you've got lots of potential energy. And then gravity pulls you back down, and you get more movement energy, and then you land on the hard floor. And all that energy you had just goes. It leaks out, it becomes heat or sound, and next time you jump, you have to just use all your leg energy again. And that's fine, that's an okay way of jumping. But trampolines do something really cool. So first of all, you spread out a big sheet of fabric and you attach springs all the way around the edges, and those springs attach to a frame. So when you push down on a trampoline, you might think that the fabric you're standing on is stretchy, but it's actually not. All of that stretch is coming from the springs. So when you're stood on your trampoline, your legs do exactly the same thing. You use movement energy to push you into the air. You go up, 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 and down, and down, and down, and down. Except this time, when you land on the trampoline and you stretch all of those springs. So instead of all your movement energy just like disappearing, turning into useless energy, you store a little bit of it inside the springs when they stretch. So you land and the springs go woo, and they store just a little bit of energy inside. And that means when you go for your second jump, your legs add movement energy, but you get a boost from the trampoline. So trampolines literally use energy from your first jump to boost your second jump, which is so cool. So each time you bounce, you're using energy from your jump before to boost your jump. Awesome. And that's what Eric and Ivan are doing here. You can see the trampoline stretching as they land, and then whoosh, like boosting them into the air. And that's why trampoline jumping is so much easier and so much higher than like regular on the ground jumping. It's because less of your energy is getting wasted as useless energy. So let's say you like trampoline jumping. It's cool. It's not as high as it could be. Let's say you're a trampoline engineer and it's your job to design better, bouncier trampolines. What can you do to a trampoline to make it better, more bouncy? Well, there's two things that you can do really. Number one, you can replace all of those big, heavy trampoline springs with even bigger, even heavier trampoline springs. Now, like I said, the amount of energy you can store in a spring depends on how stiff the spring is. So if you get an even stiffer spring, you can store more of your energy from your first jump inside it. The second thing that you can do is you can add just more springs everywhere. And now you've kind of increased the amount of energy you can store, because each spring can only store a specific amount. So the more springs you have, the more amounts of energy you can store. But if you're a trampoline engineer, which some of you might be, you got to be careful. If you take all those bouncy springs and you replace them with like really strong, really massive springs, eventually you're going to get a trampoline that no one can push down anymore. So if you can't push down and stretch those springs, the trampoline isn't going to work as a trampoline anymore, because you won't be able to store any energy if you can't stretch those springs when you land. So that's my warning to any trampoline engineers out there. Now, I don't recommend making those changes to your trampoline at home. Trampolines are designed to be like a certain amount of safe. So if you go in there and start messing with the springs, that could be super dangerous. So let's say you want a less dangerous way of improving a trampoline. You want more energy, because the more energy you have, the higher you go. And the best way to store that energy is in the springs. So how can you add more energy to those springs? Well, the answer is kind of simple and kind of complicated at the same time. The best way to do it is to steal somebody else's energy. So let's say there's two people on a trampoline. Person one lands on the trampoline and they stretch those springs and they store their energy in it. But person one doesn't jump. Instead, person two lands and they stretch the trampoline even more. Stretch. And now, two people's energies are stored in the trampoline. So instead of one boost, there are two boosts available. Now when person two jumps, they have not just their energy, but their friend's energy as well to boost them into the air. Now this is called double jumping, and it requires really, really specific timing. And I actually don't advise you try it at home, just in case it works really well. It might yeet you off the trampoline, so don't try it at home. Don't get me in trouble. but it requires perfect timing. So Sophie and Kat gave it a try here, and it's so difficult to do. They only managed to give each other little mini boosts, so they didn't quite get the ultimate mega jump we were aiming for here. But that's the best way to get the highest jump on a trampoline. You just steal somebody else's energy and you use it to yeet you into the air. So now you know this knowledge, I advise you to use it wisely, and maybe don't try this one at home. I hope you enjoyed this talk. I've been Leah from Leah Loves Science. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more cool science and engineering stuff like this. Bye!
Wow, thanks for that, Leah. Who'd have known all of that? Just never thought of that when I was on my trampoline at home. So welcome back, and just to say welcome back as well to Jackie, who some of you may have seen on Monday, was my guest presenter on Monday. So Jackie, just want to introduce yourself. I know Get Up to Speed isn't new to you, but just want to explain to the viewers who might see you later today who you are.
Okay then, yes, so thank you very much for inviting me as your guest speaker and co-presenter, John. Yeah, I've been involved with GUTS right from the beginning, right, when we started at the Blue Shed 10, 11 years ago now. I've been involved with it every single year, so thank you very much for inviting me here to do it in this virtual place. Wonderful.
You're welcome, and we'd be doing it on your home patch if we were live at Magnus. So just tell us what your day, there was a day job, Jackie.
Well, my job is to be positive. What better job is that? It's about being positive about all those things that Rotherham's got. So all our great places, all our great industry, all our great culture, our great people, and featuring some of the people, the companies that you've got here today on your Get Up to Speed virtual platform. So yeah, and I'm very, very impressed. 10,000 people I think you've got. 10,000 people over this week, so it's absolutely amazing, and it just goes to show what great collaboration can do. And we had a fantastic day Monday, so I'm really looking forward to today as well.
Marvellous. And what did you think to Leah?
Oh my God, what amazing young woman. Where does she work again?
She works at the UK Atomic Energy Authority that is just opened up premises in Rotherham.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I have a little bit of that knowledge, John. That's fantastic. Amazing. And so engaging and explaining science so easily. I think it's about exciting people about science and technology, and this is what this week's all about, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, yeah. And we've got more of that coming up later, so please join us again at 11 o'clock when we'll be hearing about one company in Rotherham again, Jackie, AS Seals, journey to net zero. So looking after the planet while keeping people in jobs and keeping the economy going, and with lots of great work opportunities. So come and hear more about AS Seal at 11.
Sheffield is home to an advanced manufacturing park, and the area as a whole has a key role to play, I think, in our aim of making the UK the best place in the world to do science.
The North Star, the St Paul's Way Summer Science School and the Well North Enterprises Partnership encourages innovation and opportunity to inspire your generation. Our vision is for the UK to become the best place in the world to practice science, technology, engineering, arts and maths.
Landing checks. Undercarriage. Down 3 greens. Brakes. 4,200 green. Fuel. It's good. We've got 13,500 pounds. Landing lamps. Can go out, I suppose. Flash your arrival. Can't be finals. Yeah, no.
Gaining qualifications is a key stepping stone to future employment.
It's important because you never really get these opportunities in life, and it really helps with your future more than you think it will. On your CV, your confidence will improve a lot. From these 4 days, you can see a difference between everyone you've met.
But qualifications alone do not guarantee success in finding, keeping and progressing in employment.
I think it really helps young adults to develop their skills and become more employable to help their future careers.
Our Summer Academy gives young people the opportunity to gain key skills and attributes that employers are looking for.
Personally, I think I've gained a lot of confidence, self-esteem, and that will definitely help me out in the future. Plus, I've also learned how to write CVs, which I didn't know before.
Our week-long, fun and interactive programme is designed for students aged 14 to 18 who are keen to get a head start.
I have more knowledge about jobs and how things work, especially engineering.
Join us this summer and discover the world of work.